This episode was sponsored by Slate Black Industries. For grips and accessories, visit slateBlackIndustries.com. Cheers to summer. Some of us out there, we like to collect rifles, and we like to shoot it. There are certain collectibles that are pleasurable to shoot. And so this whole segment is going to be a little bit heavier on rifles that have both a collectability and a shootability. And to kickstart this topic, let's talk about the collector's shooter's number one Satan. Of course, we're talking about
Bubba.
What is Bubba? Bubba takes a otherwise collectible rifle and turns it into trash. In the hopes of making it better. He means well, but like many things that Bubba does, he means well, but he does poorly. This is not a Bubba rifle, although it resembles a Bubba rifle. The Yugo M69 is actually, it looks like what you call a sporterized M48, a sporterized Mauser. Essentially removing all of the wood that was surrounding the barrel, in this case completely replacing it with a Monte Carlo type stock, putting a Pachmeyer butt plate on, and drilling and tapping the receiver for an optic. This is a classic look for a Bubba rifle. I don't have one to show. This is why I'm just showing the one that looks the most hilariously. You tell the Yugoslavs to make a sniper rifle, they just Bubba their own service rifle into a sniper rifle. But that's for a different video and a different story. That's essentially a lot of the things that we see what Bubba does. Bubba does it because he's trying to increase the utilitarian value of the rifle, or in his or her mind, Bubba is trying to give more value to the rifle. But today I've got 3 examples to show you of Bubba rifles that hurt me very, very personally, and I'm working in the process of rehabilitating them. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Swedish M41B sniper rifle. This is an incredibly expensive and valuable rifle. And unfortunately, if you look at it a little bit closer, you'll realize that Bubba unfortunately got his or her hands on this. Now, this actually has the original scope mount as well. And it also has the classic sniper bolt, which is blued, unlike the other Swedish Mausers, with a turn-down bolt handle. Also has the M55 rear sights, so this is savable. But what did Bubba do to it? If you look closely, this is a Timney trigger that Bubba installed in the M41B. Looking back at the value of this, maybe these used to be cheaper. Samco at one point, they were importing these things coming in at like $1,000 a piece, which was that's still nothing for the mid 2000s. That's still a lot of money for back in the day, but still significantly cheaper than the $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000, even $6,000 that this rifle commands nowadays. And Bubba decided to take one of the best service rifle triggers and replace it with a Timney trigger. Intention is probably that the Timney trigger gives it a better single-stage trigger pull. I don't know why Bubba would put felt on the butt plate, but this is going to be a massive amount of annoyance. I'm basically going to have to take the whole butt plate off and soak it into some type of mineral spirits to get that stuff unglued. Oops. I was able to find an actual Swedish Ajax scope for it, so thank goodness there. But I went and I decided, hey, this doesn't have a cleaning rod, so let's put the cleaning rod in, shall we? Why isn't it going through? You'll notice if you look down here, Bubba decided to put a sling stud in here. I could only presume that Bubba was trying to mount a bipod to the sniper rifle. There you go. Bubba has improved the $5,000 classic C&R sniper rifle. Good job. Now, I'm going to be slowly reworking this one. There we are. I already have the trigger. Of course, you saw the cleaning rod that I have. And this shall be restored somewhat to maybe a lower end of that couple $1,000 classic sniper rifle. And we'll take it on practical accuracy. But this is honestly one of the lesser offenders, I would say, out there. Although I really wish they didn't drill. Now at this point, you may be wondering why Henry is talking to the microphone with it turned off. And that would be because the battery died. I am out here refilming this entire segment. Clearly the best day to do that. But because we filmed that a while back, you can see that I have fully fixed the ethical Bubba's mistakes, and now I have a decent example of the M41B sniper rifle, and we've actually used it on the show to show you guys the performance of it.
Impact, center. Center right.
Now, let's start talking about some of the enemies of collector marksmen, people that you honestly need to look out for, because this is seriously some irreversible work. And we're going to start with Bubba Dot Inc. This is a lovely example. If you take this off, it would have been a lovely example of a refurbed M39 finished Mosin Nagant. Unfortunately, Bubba Dot Inc, which is in this example IO Inc, yes, the same IO who later on makes Explodey AKs, decided to mount a... Let's take this off first. It's fairly tight. Eat my Wheaties in the morning, and it still won't come off. We are human beings, and we know how to use tools. Tight like a tiger. Anyways, if you take the POSP scope that I have off, you'll see that IO Inc decided to put a Russian-style dovetail rear mount on this. Presumably, they were trying to make snipers. M39 snipers that took POSP scope, PSOP scopes, or PSO1 scopes. Unfortunately, those never existed. So IO Inc essentially, from the factory, destroyed all of these lovely M39 Mosin Nagants by putting the side plate and inletting the wood in order to do that. Otherwise, this would have been a pristine example. The wood is beautiful, steel is refinished, and the bluing on it is near pristine. Very unfortunate, because this would have been an excellent example of an M39.
Oh, but wait, there's more. This comes with your very own Timney trigger installed by Bubba, where he had to remove some wood to accommodate the safety, like a Remington 700.
Since it's already been Bubba'd, I don't know, I may make a fairly rare sniper version of the M39, or I may just keep it as is. The downside to stuff like this is they crank them out by the wholesale, and at the moment, or at the time of manufacturing these things, they would have sold for slightly more, because unfortunately the more gullible population, this is the pre-internet world, would have just bought these as, oh, Mosin Nagant snipers. They use Russian scopes. But nowadays we know a lot better, because we're able to cross-check information and shame companies that do this to rifles. So let's move on to the last category. and one of the most heart-wrenching categories. This would be the Malicious Bubba category. Now, you may say, oh, this is just a normal Type 99. It is. This one, however, is non-import marked and also has a full mum, meaning that this Type 99 would have been taken off of a Japanese soldier as a wartime trophy. If you look back on the previous video that I was talking about this, you'll see that this stock and the handguard are slightly different in color. That's because this is a replacement stock. Because the original one, the original owner decided to cut some speed stripes in it. He decided to put a grip zone onto the side, presumably to make the thrusting of bayonet that much more gustier. Once upon a time, these things used to be very cheap. And so you'll see a lot of this stuff happen to Lee Enfields, 98Ks, Type 99s. These surplus rifles were never, back in the day, were never really looked upon as truly valuable collectibles as we see them nowadays. And I predict the future in Rollmark Colts, pre-bands to also follow that suite. The farther we get from the manufacture of these things, the more scarce these things become through attrition, through collectors actually holding on to them, etc. These things, the value is going to go up. Now, a full mum Type 99 with no import mark, clearly this one doesn't come with any capture papers, that would have been actually a fairly desirable Type 99 to get. Especially this one has the proper anti-aircraft sights, and it also has the monopod attachment points, the lug to attach the monopods. So it's just, sometimes when I see some things like this, it's a little bit of a shame to see that they had some grip zones cut into them. I can't help myself to restore them. Now, final conversation we have to have when it comes to Bubba rifles comes down to the value proposition. So when we're looking at the value proposition, you're looking at how much these things are sold for, because Bubba rifles, as long as you could find them on the market, you could argue that they are worth less. Well, they are worth less. You don't have to argue that. But you take the price that then is going to be offered to you with a consideration of also how much it's going to cost for you to put parts onto it in order to restore it. Now, sometimes these things are sneaky, because things like a normal Mosin Nagant trigger may be easy to find, whereas if I need to find an M39 trigger for the Finnish rifles, that's a bit more difficult, because the Finns did do some work when they were fitting the Russian receivers with Mosin Nagant triggers. The Finnish M39s have some of the best triggers on surplus rifles out there. And so you can't just throw a Russian trigger in here. So while it seems like you can just go out and buy a Russian trigger, you can't. The other part of it, could I just replace the stock to cover up where the inlet is? You could, but these things were also shimmed at the factory. So these are things that you just cannot do anymore. You ought to, when you're looking at things like this, and you're trying to turn it into a marksman shooter, or a collector shooter rifle, you really ought to think about the base cost, the cost of the parts. Are you going to have to send it to a gunsmith? And that's a final price. And on top of that, because it's got mismatched parts thrown onto it, unfortunately, the value is not going to be the same as, let's say, this compared to an all-matching M41B. It's not going to be the same value. However, as far as a shooter goes, I have a good example. It's in the original stock. Once I replaced the trigger, it actually felt pretty close to an M41B trigger. I found the original optic. Everything lined up. I took it to the long range, and it lined up perfectly with the scope's calibration. This is actually a cheaper way to get into shooting an M41B, something that's quite valuable nowadays. And so it comes down to, it's kind of like flipping a house. You take a fixer-upper, and then you list out all the work that has to be done to it, all the parts that you will need to put onto it. You need to be honest with yourself on your own abilities to do it, because sometimes you do need to be sending these things to gunsmiths for some gunsmith support, depending on your core skill. You don't want to turn into Bubba yourself. So all of that factored in, if the price is still lower than, you know, a mismatched collectible, and it will bring you joy at the shooting range to experience this type of collectible rifle, I would say it's worth it. Otherwise, unfortunately, Bubba has a tendency of destroying history. So, if you like more content like this, let us know in the comments section. Happy to do more. Help me with some ideas on what I could generate in this collector shooter sphere, because this is very much a new series that I'd like to push out. It's something that I'm personally very passionate about, something that I enjoy doing very, very much, shooting collectibles. And so I know there's plenty of you guys out there, so just let me know. But for the time being, it's good being here, even though I had to record this whole section twice. I'll see you guys on the range. Yeah!
So to round this video out, I wanted to share this legend of a Bubba rifle, still available in the Alaska scene if you're interested, by the way. A Johnson 1941 that has been heavily modified and rechambered to 338-06. What do you think? Would you rescue this? Let us know in the comments section.
716 is Steel 96, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green. How copy, over?
Steel 96, this is 716, roger, over. 16, Steel 91, 1 pack, green, green, over. This is 716, roger, over.
16, Steel 92, 1 Victor, 2 packs, Redcon 1, over.